Welcome to the third lesson in the Sinnaps training course. Today's lesson is going to be a little more complicated, and these are the things we're going to see. It's normal for there to be changes in a project, and its characteristics need rethinking or changing. What is important is not that there are no changes, but rather how we deal with those that happen. That's why it's very important to have the tools to see the impact of these changes on our planning, and that's where the Sinnaps test mode comes in. Let's imagine that in this project, the supplier for this activity tells us there's going to be a week's delay. Clearly, there are many ways we can tackle these changes, and we're going to see them in test mode. So, we're going to go to Test Mode and click on Create a New Simulation. This makes Sinnaps open the same project in a kind of parallel universe, only accessible to us. What this means is that none of the changes we make in test mode will be visible to anyone in our project other than a project manager. We can make changes to the planning and resources in test mode. In this specific case, what we're facing is the fact that an activity is going to be delayed. Let's see what happens if this activity is delayed by a week. By delaying this activity, which is on the critical path, by a week, we can see that the end date for our project would also be delayed. And that is perhaps something that we cannot have happen. So, we're going to put things back how they were, and the first thing we need to do is define the limitations. In this case, we cannot have the project finishing later than the 25th. So, what we can do is maybe shorten the lead time for the review. To do this, we may have to plan a few extra hours of our time, so we can come here, choose the resource we're going to use to knock off these hours and choose, say, to add 4 hours of work. So once we've done that, we can start the activity perhaps a day later. Consequently, we're going to insert a time restriction. As we've added a time restriction, now, given the lead time for this last activity is set, when we click on the prototype model activity, we can see the clearance for the activity. Based on this clearance, the activity can only be put back by a single day. Another thing we could do is to modify the user final tests activity. We're going to modify this activity because it is on the critical path, and if we alter any of the other activities, we won't manage to reduce the duration of the project. So, we come here and plan another resource. We're going to continue planning hours, which I'll use to reduce the time required for this activity. Let's put a total of 8 hours, for example. As we've seen in other lessons, we can open the resource graph to check the availability of this resource. Here we can see that there is no problem, and we might be able to reduce the activity by 3 days, although that isn't going to be enough. So, what we could do is come to this activity and reduce its duration in the same way. In this case, let's say 2 days, for example. After doing that, when we click on Prototype Model again, we'll see that we've gained 6 days of planning in the activity clearance. This means we can postpone the activity a further 6 days without it having an impact on the project end date. In fact, we can see that the end date remains the same. Thus, we've made changes in the planning. We've seen how these changes affect both the budget and planning of the project. We've managed to retain the end date, and we can discuss the matter with our colleagues. When we exit planning, Sinnaps gives us 2 options. We can save as or discard. If we hit discard, this test won't be saved anywhere. If we save as, it can be saved so other project managers can view it or perhaps discuss the matter later. In this case, we're going to save it as Scenario 1. We can see that having it saved, when we return to the project planning, none of the changes made have been implemented. we can see the length of the prototype model remains the same. If we click on the Test Mode option again, we'll see there's a new option, Load Simulation. When we load a simulation, we get a list of all the simulations we've saved for this project, which can be opened. This allows us to accumulate simulations which can be discussed with the various people who may be affected by the changes in each scenario. If we so wish, prior to implementing this simulation, we can download reports, view the changes and see the potential economic impact. Perhaps we can also share them with our managers. Once we're happy with the changes, we can implement them by clicking on this button. What's going to happen is that the application is going to take all the changes we've made in this test and implement them across the current project. Thus, the original planning for this project is overwritten by a new one. Doing this does not alter any of the features other than the planning or planned resources. All the subtasks, comments, documents, and all the rest of the work we've done on the project will remain just as they were before. Only the planning and assignment of resources will have changed. Don't forget that when we implement a save scenario in the project, all the other scenarios we've saved will be eliminated. So, we need to be very sure prior to making this decision. It's possible that over time we may need to undertake projects which are similarly structured. In order not to start each project from scratch, Sinnaps gives us the option of generating templates. When creating a template from a project, Sinnaps takes all the data from that project, the dependencies, activities, subtasks, all the resources planned and all the descriptive details of the project, and stores it in a template so we can reuse it all. Let's see how to generate a project template. Let's imagine we have a project like this one and we want to convert it into a template. It's very important to know that two things need considering when creating a template. The first is that templates are intended to be used at any time and with any team. That's why one of the things we can't do is export resources assigned to specific people. If we have a project in which we've assigned work to specific users, the first thing to do is create generic resources to replace these specific users. Let's say that, for example, we need to create a designer resource to replace one of the members of the team. We simply click on an activity, choose the option to plan a resource and create the designer resource. It's not necessary to apply a cost or to plan hours, but when we're defining the properties of the resource, we need to specify that this resource is a person. This done, once we have the generic resources in place to replace the members of our team, we can come here to the Manage Team section. We can see there is an option menu to the right of each of the team members. Click on Assign the work of this user to in the Options menu and we'll get a list of all the human resources for the project. If this person is going to be the designer, we find the designer resource. If they're going to be the project manager, we look for project manager or whatever other resource we've decided to use to replace this user. We go to the next person, choose the resource we are replacing this user with, and so on with the rest of the resources. Now we know for sure that none of the team members have work assigned and that all the work planned for this project is assigned to generic resources. Another thing we need to remember is that we can't assign lead times to a specific date in a template. After all, we don't know when we're going to need to do this project again. So, we go to all the activities with a time dependency and replace them with a dependency based on other activities. It's not a problem if some set dates remain in the planning, as the template can be modified later. Once we've assigned all the team members work to generic resources and eliminated set dates from the project, we head to Project Properties. Here, in the Options menu on the right, is the option to create a template. So we click on the Create Template option and enter the generic name we'll be using to view this template. When we create a template, we see that Sinnaps supplies us with the Template Edition mode. This Template Edition mode is another parallel universe. It allows us to edit the templates for our projects and can't be accessed by anyone without permission. Unlike with the project planning, here we have no specific dates. We just have the day of the week. This is because when we plan a project based on this template, we can do so on any day of the year. We can also see that by creating the template, all the activities that are solely dependent on a set date have been brought forward to the start of the project. This is because Sinnaps optimises the planning by placing the activities as soon as possible when they have no dependencies, as is the case here. So the first thing we need to do is to go to the activities which are out of place and define the dependencies that will return them to the right place in the planning. Once this is done, we can enter the various activities and check that the resources and their other properties remain as we want them to be. We can continue to make the adjustments we deem opportune to alter the template for our project. Remember that this is something that needs to adapt to a wide variety of scenarios, so we don't need to be excessively specific. Here, below, we have a series of tools we can work with. We can manage a team of template permit level users. In other words, if we want a person to be able to use this template to start projects themselves, we give them the role of process starter. If we want someone to be able to use the template and modify or optimize it, we give them the role of template editor. By default, all Sinnaps templates are private. We can invite users to start projects or modify them if we want. We can also publish the templates so any member of the Sinnaps community can use them. If we want to publish a template for a process that works really well for our company, or to share our way of tackling specific projects with everyone, there is a public information option. Here, we have a form to complete. To complete this form, Sinnaps will ask for a series of information and public descriptions so other members of the Sinnaps community can read the template properties before deciding whether to use it. Once this information has been filled in, we click on the Publish symbol. After this, the Sinnaps team will then analyse the template to ensure the information published is sufficiently detailed. You will be informed if everything is in order and the template published. Let's see how we could use a template. Let's imagine we're at the activity board and we want to start a new project based on a template. So, we come to this drop-down menu below our user and go to the Manage Templates section. Here, we are in the template market. This template market is a place where we have access to all templates, both public and private. As I said before, Sinnaps users can share templates publicly so other users can use them. In this case, we're going to go here to see the most popular templates, or we could go directly to My Templates. Here we can see our private templates, the ones we don't want to share with the rest of the community. We select one of them, entering the template. We can see a page with a brief summary of all the activities involved in the project and an overview of the planning. This allows us to be sure we've accessed the template we need. We can do two things from here, or go into edit mode to alter this template, if we have authorization to do so. If we do this, we'll be changing the template so that all future projects based on this template will benefit from the authorizations we've given. This means the process is undergoing continuous improvement. If we want to start a project instead of modifying this template, we just click on the Start Project button. When we start the project, Sinnaps will take all the information we have about this template and will, by default, start the project from a week prior to the current date. Here, we can see that all the planned project costs are still present, as are the subtasks, descriptions, etc., etc. So once we've started, we can adjust the planning to the specific properties of this project. We can alter the resources to see how this project will react in this new situation, and, when we're ready, we can then invite the team on board. Having done this, we can assign the generic resources previously created to our team members. For example, in this case, we can give this user the work that is assigned to this resource in the template. And that's how we create templates which can be reused on a regular basis. And that is it for our third Sinnaps lesson. Let me remind you that from here you can access a lot more content: video tutorials, the academy, the blog. You can also sign up to the various Sinnaps management courses. If you have any questions, you can ask away through our support chat. Thank you and see you next time.